Oh, so
Hey, so we're recording now, and Lee is driving, and we are converting an old view test, which was not using view test utils and testing component internals. We are rewriting it to test the components template and interface, not be dependent on the internals, and to use view test utils. So we're going through the old test right now. Making sure we're capturing the test scopes to make sure we don't miss anything, but I'm feeling confident we're not going to miss anything. All right.
So this is where you're saying about internals, Paul.
Yeah.
These things we don't want to test.
Don't want to test that.
Cool.
So when we open,
sorry, I skipped past that a little bit.
No, you're good. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I consider this more like a unit test, right? We're saying specifically what does this method do rather than what does clicking this button do.
And I think like coming from most paradigms, that is kind of what unit testing would be like. But when you think of view components, methods and state, kind of like they should have like a private keyword in front of them. So we don't test private methods, and you don't want anything to call the method. Very rarely do we want to do that. And there are some exceptions that we do allow, which are like the open here and the modal and things like that. But even then, there's even better ways around that. So it's not necessarily about like, hey, we just don't want to test methods. It's that in view land, methods aren't public. So we're not testing the right thing then. So this is so we are
should we see what it does?
Create temp entry is that's gonna be the action from the store. These are this is testing if we actually create from a template. Yes. So let's add a to-do. This is the context that we want to make sure when using one of the template buttons, when we're doing create from template button. Oh, do we want to add one? The other one was good too, right? We want to keep that.
I've kind of cheated. I know it's a bit lazy, but I've said when we add or rename a tree or a blob, we want to check the title, the modal title, the button title, the form label, and the show file. Like it's a tabular, matrixy, whatever you want to call it, exponential, crazy.
I feel like your like daily planner has just one to-do item. And you just editing that one item. Of like, I've knocked everything out except for this one item. It just keeps getting bigger.
Get things done.
I can't find the control for my air conditioning. Where the hell's it gone? Oh, there it is. Sorry, it's baking. Right. So
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. When using one of the template buttons,
yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's just keep it. Let's just keep that context.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
anything else is the question.
Submitting the form.
Again, they're just methods, but what's it checking under the?
So
I guess
when
not using a template or
when file already exists and submit throws. That's what looks like it's going to happen.
That one's checking the create flash method call, which seems reasonable to me. We could probably lift that as is.
Except for like line 176 and 180, which are directly calling the methods.
Yeah, we'd need to have proper interactions with the component there.
It's not that bad. Yeah, it's not that bad to replace these kind of things. Line 189, it does not throw when target, and then I would do
this. So I'm just going to double check what, because we did get a few hints as well. So I'm just going to say if there's anything. Okay, so we're saying store, we can expect store dispatch to being called is a good way to check that, like when the file doesn't already exist, that it does actually do what it's supposed to do, when the folder doesn't already exist, when the file that you're renaming, etc.
Yeah.
So is that kind of it to do when file doesn't exist?
Yep.
So what do we call it? Dispatches?
Or just successful. Like I usually organize these as like, I'll call this case like when default, which is like, this is the happy case, we do the happy thing. And then I have all my exceptional conditions.
Okay, so maybe this could go down. Is that kind of what you, whoa, bad things at the end?
Yeah, cool, awesome. And so then this looks like special behavior where we trim white space from the, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Which is
seem
great.
Reasonable.
Yeah. Can you actually have, you can't have white space in a file name, right? At the end of it. Right?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. Do you want me to Google it?
We could just try it on your, we could try it on your machine right now. We can do touch.
You can, yeah. Well, depending on which system, a file can have any characters except / and null.
But I thought that they couldn't be at the beginning or end. So
A slash cannot occur anywhere in a file name, and neither can the null character. On Unix,
but what about
that's the only
space?
restriction. Space absolutely can go in a file name at any
But
point.
at the end or the beginning?
Let's try it.
Anywhere. I promise you.
Let's do foo space. Let's see what happens.
But I don't think quotes valid, or single quotes, double quotes.
Yeah, you can have any character except the two I mentioned.
This bash will resolve those quotes, so it'll just be touch foo space is what touch will do. Let's see what happens. Where's that foo space? There it is.
You're right. It's got a space at the end.
There it is.
But you know, that's what the component does. That's what the component does, right? It doesn't let you create a file with a space. I think that's quite good because copying and pasting notoriously puts phantom spaces in, right?
Yeah. I guess. I mean,
and you're just going to have to not use the web ID if you want to create a file with a space at the end.
So this is all fair. Yeah, no, because I do think most of the time that's not going to be the user's intention, but it is interesting to note that that is possible. And some file systems, because I wonder if maybe Windows doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, Windows has more restrictions. You can't have, I think, like colon and semicolon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Comma. No, you can have comma.
You can't have comma.
No, I think in Windows you can have commas in file names, but you can't have colons, I think.
That makes sense.
There's some surprisingly common characters you can't have in Windows file names.
Wow.
I tend to avoid even spaces in Windows file names. I avoid them. Actually, even Linux, I try and avoid them.
There are also names that you cannot use. You cannot call a file, I think, con. Com and various other things like that. Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I remember when I was a child, I did very bad things with hacking and stuff, and you used to be able to hide files on file systems by using names along those lines. Especially on Windows, you could use dots and all sorts of clever things to basically make a file completely invisible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Right. Where do we start?
We got this. So let's open up our test subject. Let's kill the right window. Let's open the test subject. The modal.view there would be nice.
So maybe we'll try this now if we've got enough space.
Oh, okay, sweet.
So what were we interested mainly in the template, I guess, so we can
We
sort of
are
see if the objects got test IDs and that kind of thing.
We are mainly interested in the template. So
so shall we create some finds to find by test IDs for some interesting parts?
Yeah, there's 100 ways we can approach this. Let's I am going to suggest we do this. Almost every single one of these is going to need this store. But let's create our create component function. Let's create that first. And let's not do that in the before each, because we only want to create the component. These are going to have different conditions. So let's not do that in the top level before each. But we can
gonna cheat and have a look how we normally do it elsewhere. This sort of thing.
I guess you can just copy that over.
But probably with a lot less complexity than that one. We don't need router. We don't think we need Apollo.
Can I suggest put this in the top level described rather than this submit form described?
Yes, let's totally do that. I didn't realize we were already nested.
Yeah, because we don't want all of this to be nested, right?
How do we feel about using the extended wrapper component or however? Because
I believe that we're fans.
I am, and since we're speaking about finding stuff, this has it out of the box. So
find by test ID, yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
And extended. Are we using it here? Yes, we are. So we probably won't need this one anymore, I guess.
Yeah. Mocks, we're not doing any toasty mocks. And can we move those lets that declare our shared variables would be at the top?
We can indeed.
And then I do think we will want to, let's initialize the store at the very top. Because that's, if we need to change the state or whatever, we can do that in an inner context easily. So that way we don't have to.
Do we need before each to do it?
Yeah.
We do, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
You need to move it down a little bit, right?
And then one small thing, and you'll see this and some of the other example code we have here. When we want to create a spy for a function, what's happening in line 18 is a little inferior to using just spy on, because if dispatch doesn't exist, we're just going to override it and just create we're just going to override it no matter what. And there's no way to call the internal method if we ever want to do that. If we use just spy on, it'll blow up if the method doesn't already exist, which is a good thing. And we can have it call the inner methods and behave normally as we'd want, or have a lot more control over it. So instead of on line 18 where we do dispatch equals just fn, let's get rid of that whole line and let's do just.spy on. Store, comma, quote, dispatch. Yeah. That's the money.
Beautiful.
Cool. Props is going to be different. Let's go up and see the props of our subject on the left.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh snap! Do we
None. So it's getting them all from the store or the state, is it?
What is modal types? What's line 21? Where does that get? How does that ever become a tree?
This.modal type.
If we scroll down.
Do you want me to see where this is consumed?
No, not yet. If we scroll down to, we could probably just do a search for modal type equals, just a single equal space. Space equals space, maybe.
Okay, on open, we get modal type based on
snap.
The type that's.
Is this open method called anywhere from inside of here?
Probably not. No.
Oh snap! So this
Does that mean we have to use these horrible internals to do the testing, basically?
I mean, it's the component looks like it's written with at least open as like a public API. That's seems to be its intent. So without refactoring how that works, we'll have to, yeah.
Just a quick check-in before we get too far. We're not going to end up too much with basically rewriting what we've already got, all right? The existing tests. We can definitely improve on that, even now we've made this discovery.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
We will still definitely get to, we're already using view test utils, so there's already improvement here.
Awesome.
The huge, I think the down, what's not great is clearly we will have to interact with the internals for us to use this component.
Yeah.
But rather than us peppering that all throughout the test, let's put that in a helper function with a to-do, basically saying, this is how this component expects to be opened. We can address, let's address this and another thing. So that's interesting. Was not expecting that. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Something like that. And then we're going to have a const like open or something like that.
Yeah. Out of curiosity about the code on the left, and this is not to blame anybody, but just to understand the context. Is there something that kind of you evolved to making this a bad idea, or is this just trying to force a paradigm which the framework does not really support into it with the public method, or just like, yeah, using a rather private method as a public API?
Can you clarify your question, or
let me see if I can rephrase it.
What? Go on,
please.
Are you asking, is the view's intention that methods on a component are private explicitly, and
yes,
they just happen to be available? Well, I don't know, but I think there's certainly a paradigm where it's useful. So, for instance, you can have some root component that provides its own instance to descendants, and that's useful for where you've got to have quite deep connection between some root component and its descendants. So, for instance, you might have a drop-down component and you've got drop-down item subcomponents, and maybe this is not a good example, but maybe the drop-down option components add things using the method of the parent instance or stuff like that, and that's usually done with provide inject. Basically, that's a case where the methods are used in a, let's call it protected, to use an object-oriented term, sense. It's protected in the sense that it's meant to be used for components that are built to work together, but it's not meant to be used outside of that.
Gotcha.
I think that is like a good way. If you want to use methods of a component, that's one good way of doing it.
Okay. That's where I was kind of coming from. Like, I was basically asking, is there ever a way where this is a good practice? And this does very much sound like a yes. So, okay, thanks for pointing that context.
I think we have a preference to for state reactivity to drive the behavior rather than function calls in the first place. Like, let's try to be reactive with state. And that's primarily the relationship between components, is the state changes. So these method calls circumvent that. And sometimes with some situations, it's like, this is a lot easier than something else, than the state way, because this does have a lot of idealistic purity to it in some situations. So, but in here, I think that we can see.
It seems like it'd be straightforward to pass these two things as props, right?
Right. And I think we can see already some situations that there's hidden coupling here of, like, what happens if open gets called multiple times without it ever being closed. Like, we already are assuming, like, this whole component and the client that's already interacting with this is assuming I call open and it happens to freeze everything so that I can't recall it and the state's going to change in the middle or whatever, because we have this whole context of I'm in a tree. But what if there was something that could trigger it being in a blob or whatever, like while it was open? And the fact that we're letting something outside of it, I'm changing my internal data state. It's really confusing who owns this state. And so we tend to use events with like top level components for this kind of thing. But I don't know. I think we tend to try to keep things state driven as much as possible and not these method calls, because there can be dragons here. But yeah, you're totally right. On line 17 on the right, yeah, we'll just have an open helper.
So what's it going to look like? Is it going to be a sort of, we're going to pass it something and it's going to be a, what's it? Is that the right sort of?
Let's have it pass in the
type and the path, I guess.
Yeah, so it's just a little nice adapter for this internal method. Yeah.
And the old school way is to do, is it VM or not?
We'll be
wrapper here. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what it's called on line 10 or line 7.
Then we just call it direct.
No, so well, you do want wrapper.vm. Yeah.
Thank you. And then we are just passing type and path, aren't we?
Wrapper VM is my street name.
What kind of methods you got?
Oh, they're private methods. They're all private methods.
Right, so we've got something to open. Yeah, so that's weird. So I'm just trying to understand what state the component would be in when it's mounted prior to us have opened.
It has no props data, so we're just gonna mount it, you know.
So it kind of has no state when it's mounted.
Yeah. So, but we will just call it like this. We will mount it like this, and on line 12, we just need to get rid of our second option. Actually, we need to pass in the store. That's the one thing we do need to do. Instead of props data, we'll pass in the store.
I guess we just do that, all right? So
we can get rid of the argument for props data.
We still need the brackets, right?
Yeah.
Or parens, I suppose I should call them. But
Yeah.
Okay, so we're creating the store.
I would like we've
call
open in here, or
What were you saying, Mark?
Go on.
I was going to say, we're passing in the store. We definitely will want to recreate the store for each test, just like we will for recreate the component. So one way we could do this is, it's probably done in a bunch of different ways in our code base, but in the mount component method, store could be one of the arguments, and it could default to our factory function for creating the store, so that we could override it when we want to. Maybe that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
The point is, we want a factory method for the store.
Well, I don't know if we need a factory method for it. Because creating a store, we can just manually change the state of it before we create the component. There's no arguments.
Mutate the state.
Well, there's no arguments to the store, to creating a
No,
store.
but there is initial state. Like, what is the state of the store? Because when the modal does stuff, presumably it mutates the state of the store.
Right. So
make sure we have a.
My thought is line 25 at the top level before each, because this collaborator is always going to be the same. We just need to make sure we just have a fresh one every time. We could just put that at the top level and then mutate whatever.
Stupid question, I'm sure, but
yeah.
would it make any sense? I don't know how many things we've got to do, but I think this might have been what Mark was sort of saying a moment ago, that we could pass it, like find out what things we actually need to, how many variables are there in the state that we actually need to work with. Let's say that there's only one something state, and there's, what else do we need to, the type and the path. We could actually pass these things in, and then we could sort of, well, you can see I already put the open in there. Is this a terrible idea, or to do everything now?
Depends on.
I would create these, simplify this later. If we see ourselves repeating ourselves all the time, let's do that later. But sometimes when these mount components do too much, they're doing extra things when we reuse them, to where it can actually hurt what
it's 50-50. Like, part of me is like, I don't like manipulating these kind of globals, if that makes sense, from inside of tests. But another part of me, I guess, if we want to simplify so you can access any property of the store or the wrapper or whatever it might be. So we'll leave that out for the moment.
And we also, because we're talking this high level, like, we kind of don't need our mount component function because we don't have any props. It's all just about the open. We're never going to have a different context of the component.
We could always just do that in here almost.
So I
do need the wrapper.
Right. I like doing this when things, but wait, I say that, but now I need to correct myself. But at the time we create it, we might need to adjust the store first. And that's what I think Mark is saying, is we could have that in a function or not, or we could just manually do the store. So we don't want to do this in the top level before each. I am actually pretty certain of that. I was thinking we could, but no, let's not do that. Let's keep it like this. Let's keep moving forward, and we'll reshuffle things if we need to, if there's simpler ways of doing it. On line 20, I think we're overwriting a create store helper that we're already using.
Because we've actually, interesting. We've got, I didn't realize we were importing it from elsewhere.
But if we need a create store factory function, we'll add it. I'm not sure we will, but we might. On the after each, you're totally right. We want to do store null. We also want to do wrapper.destroy on the after each. Awesome. Cool. I think we're ready to start testing it. So let's create, let's describe. I always like to create a default describe where I say just default. This is the happy path case. And when I haven't done anything with it, what's the kind of state I expect it to be in? And so when I haven't opened it, like, do we expect these things to be there? Like the modal title and button title? Maybe we should just show that the modal is rendered. That's probably it.
But it wouldn't be, right? Because we render it in the open. We do show.
Well, that's not necessarily rendering it. That's just changing the state of the child modal. So I think having a renders modal is nice, and we can just find the modal and assert on it. Yeah. Yep. In this default case, we'll add a before each where we create the component before changing any of the state stuff.
I've clearly done something stupid there because it's
not
happy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So
we'll need a before each where we create the component here.
In the describe or the
in the describe, we'll need a before each where we create the component.
So lazy. I need to get some snippets or keyboard shortcuts or whatever you want to call it. So it's mount, isn't it?
Yeah. Sweet. All right. So let's do the wrapper it up find GL modal thing. Yeah.
So expect wrapper it up find
component. Yeah, it is find component.
Ooh.
GL modal. Yeah. And then let's assert the props. So let's do dot props. And it's a method, I'm pretty sure. And let's assert it to dot to equal, and we'll just put an empty object and see what it fails at. Oh man, you're writing Ruby, bro.
Is it?
No, it's more camel case.
That's the problem with let's pretend I'm a full stack, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you wish we were just writing R spec all over our code base? Like it was R spec front end.
Sometimes pros and cons.
Let's run this and see what happens.
Awesome.
Here we go.
This is slow.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's because I've just rebased, and sometimes it has to do some weird chisel after that.
All right.
Okay, we've done something silly.
Oh, if you're going to do exit, you just do exit. You can't do exit only.
Yeah, because that's saying only run this one and skip it, which is like
that's pretty.
Nope.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Okay, that's yeah, I expected it to be a lot faster the second time I did it.
Well, I think we expected this to GL modal. Oh, we got to import it.
Can I suggest you set up a watch rather than running the test suite manually? Just as the same command with double dash.
I was going to say I've never done it, so you'll have to tell me how.
I think that's it.
Yep, you got it.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. How are you guys pressed for time?
I actually have a meeting, but that's just me. Your system limit for number of file watchers reached.
So this is a Linux pain in the ass, right? You all have to apply some kind of hack to get a work around this, right? Or
there is, but have you got the GDK running or something?
I imagine so.
Yeah, can you do like GDK stop webpack?
Oh,
Yeah. So now Jest should be able to watch correctly, and it should also improve your system performance quite a lot.
awesome. So the reason I ask about time is for two reasons. One, because I'm conscious of your time, and two, because I've needed to go to the toilet for the last half an hour, but thought, no, we're going to be finished soon. So no, still
we're getting close. So I do have to hop off. I'll be available in an hour to hop back on, Lee, if you want to, and if anyone else wants to. But
yeah, I mean, maybe I'll hop off because my team might be needing me anyway, and then we'll see how we're doing in an hour or so.
Cool. Sounds good.
If Mark Happen or Yannick, if anyone knows the answer to this one, then you could help me quickly. But I would probably just Google it, and I imagine I'll find the answer quite quickly.
Gotcha. If anybody has some more minutes to spare it, actually be coming up with a small question. But everybody who needs to hop off now, please do so. Don't feel obligated to stay on this.
I will be available and would love to pair in an hour if anyone is available then. But I'll hop off right now.
Shortly. No worries.
Yeah, sorry, Yannick. Sorry, gotta hop off. I'll talk to you later. Bye, Mark.
See you then.
Bye, Lee.
See you later. Thanks, Paul. I'm gonna take my quick break then.